The Kaleidoscope.
Hey, it's your girl Sarah right here on the Kaleidoscope. A very good morning to you. I'm super excited to be here and I'm super excited to be talking about everything that is related to the United Kingdom, everything that we're interested in about it, everything we're currently talking. So, it's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio, and this is your favorite radio station where we talk about everything that is important. We talk about everything that is related to economics, business, finance, science, health, technology, whatever it is, we have it right here on Relaxed Radio. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Now, I'll be keeping you company all the way from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. So make sure you stay tuned because I have a lot of fun things coming your way. I also will be talking about a lot of interesting content that will definitely keep you hooked. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Now, also, if you have any messages, thoughts, opinions, questions that you want to ask us, that you want to share with us, then make sure you text us on 07852 473 473 and we can get talking about it. So that is what it is. Now, today I want to focus on men's health, okay? And I specifically thought we should talk about men's health because that is a little people don't really focus on men's health. We don't really talk about it, and because there's a lot of stigma when it comes to men's health as well. So my hope of doing this conversation is actually to break all the stigma that surrounds men's health, to make sure we actually have a good conversation, to make sure we have a holistic conversation about men's health, and to make sure that we can finally combat all the stigma and all the stereotypes that exist about the way men should be. And also because last week was Men's Health Week, I felt like I needed to talk about it this week because I really wanted to see the reaction, see how people reacted to men's health and how they actually spoke for men's health, because this is something that we need to focus as well, right? So we'll get into it. If you like I said before, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, messages that you would like to tell us, you can get in touch with us on 07852473473, because I feel like everyone needs to be a part of this discussion, and your opinion matters to me as well. So make sure you text me on that number because we can get in. You can be a part of this conversation as well. Okay, so let's talk about Men's Health Week. Right now, I want to start from something called the feminist movement. Right now, it's very important that we talk about the feminist movement as well, because there is sort of a connection between men's health and the feminist movement. So we'll get into it. So when it comes to the feminist movement, it predominantly exists to combat the stereotypes, combat the stigma that is there when it comes to women, right? But it also includes other genders. It also includes other orientations, and it's all about equality. It's about making sure everyone's voices are heard, everyone's thoughts and opinions are heard, and also about how everyone's suffering, everyone's dilemmas are projected and expressed to society as well. But as of right now, what we see when it comes to the feminist movement, its sole focus is towards women, and that is completely understandable given the fact that there is a lot of issues that women face. But also, while keeping that in mind, we need to make sure, or we need to address the fact that there's a lot of men out there who have who have issues as well. And we'll talk about men's rights, we'll talk about men's activism, and why things like that are also important in this day and age when it comes to the health of men and when it comes to them speaking up. So, like I said before, when it comes to health, regardless of whether it's mental health, regardless of whether it's physical health, health is very important. It's important to everyone out there. It's important to, people in UK. It's important to people in the United States of America. It's important to people everywhere, right? We need to make sure we're healthy because that is the only way we can function. So, when it comes to health, like I said, everyone's health matters, right? But today I want to focus on men's health because last week was actually Men's Health Week. Now I know you might be thinking, oh hey, it was last week. Why are you talking about it now? But the reason I actually wanted to talk about it now or this week is actually because I wanted to sort of analyze the behavior of people on the internet, analyze the behavior of men themselves when it comes to Men's Health Week, and how they responded to the fact that this week was for them, right? So that's why I'm actually talking about it this week, because I really really wanted to analyze those things and tell you about it. So we're focusing on men's health today, and Men's Health Week was actually celebrated from the 14th to the 20th of June. And the reason I actually feel like we need to discuss this topic is simply because of the fact that there is a lot of stigma when it comes to men and how men deal with their issues. So, because we actually need to talk about this, we need to talk about breaking the stigma. We need to talk about how we can handle this stigma. I thought we could actually talk about this. Okay. So, when it comes to opening up, when it comes to men expressing their emotions, or even when it comes to mental health, or even other things, even problems, because problems aren't only there for women or children, it's there for everyone, right? Everyone has problems. So, what I felt like, so when it comes to men, actually, when it comes to them opening up opening up themselves, or when it comes to them telling other people and confiding in other people about their problems, that this we know that it doesn't happen a lot, right? So I'll be talking about why it doesn't happen, why it's important that we focus on men's health, and also why we really need to make sure that that going forward, that we have a lot more room, that we have a lot more space for men to come up to talk about their feelings, to make sure that they also are given the space to express themselves, right? So, like I said, when it comes to opening up, when it comes to telling people about your feelings, a lot of men find it uncomfortable to open up and talk about the health and mental health. And let's actually think about why they feel so uncomfortable, right? Look, we understand that when you're living in a society that constantly expects you to be strong, that expects you to not be sad, and a society that thinks that if you show some form of emotion, it means you're weak. When you live in a society like that, obviously men find it very uncomfortable to talk about their feelings. Men find it very uncomfortable to open up and tell someone, hey, I'm going through a problem, I need help, or would you know someone who can help me, or even say things like, I would like to confide in you because right now I feel very burdened by what I am going through. Now, obviously, a lot of men don't do that, and that is obvious, and that is because of these traditional gender roles that are there in society, these traditional stereotypes that are there in society, where they sort of express, or where they portray this narrative that says if men open up and talk about their feelings, if men even have feelings, that they're weak, right? Which is quite ridiculous, because if you think about it, we're all human, we all have feelings, and we all have problems. And at the end of the day, regardless of your gender, we all need to talk to someone to, relieve ourselves from the burden, because I know I'm not the only one that feels so much better when you tell your problems to someone, right? Because I myself am someone who doesn't like opening up. I don't like telling people about my problems, because I feel very vulnerable, and I feel very weak, and I feel like people will judge me because of the problems I have, because at the back of my head I always feel like other people have bigger problems, right? So that is why I don't like opening up about my problems. And I know I can't relate to any of I mean, obviously I can't relate to how men feel about when they have to open up, and talk to people about their problems. But at the same time, I kind of can understand, obviously not at the same level as men do, but I understand why it is so hard to actually talk to someone and tell them about your feelings, because obviously it feels like you will burden them, and secondly because you feel like you have to be this source of strength, you have to be this pillar of strength, you have to be someone who's unshakable, someone who's very strong, and then the way to do that is to just make sure you don't express yourself, right? Which is very ridiculous, like I said. So, when it comes to them talking about their emotions, their feelings, they're actually asked to keep those emotions to themselves. And sometimes, even when men do try to get help, when men do try to talk about their feelings, they're kind of stigmatized for it, and they're told to, be quiet or don't talk about their feelings because no one wants to know, which is a really rude thing to say to someone. Because what if someone is struggling with something? What if someone is having a really hard time trying to deal with some of the issues they have, and someone just says, oh, we don't want to know about your issues, just stop talking because we don't care. And if you're one of those people, if you think that men's mental health is less important than others' mental health, then there's something you definitely need to change in yourself as well, right? And that's obviously because of the fact that That's obviously because of the fact that a lot of people out there, a lot of men out there are struggling with themselves, and you really need to help them open up. It's not your duty, but it obviously would be, make you a better person, would make you feel better if you helped out someone who's struggling with themselves, right? So when it comes to other issues, right, when it comes to things like homelessness, violence, loneliness, depression, men also tend to have higher rates of all these things, right? So let's talk about in terms of physical health. Let's talk about in terms of physical health, right? So when it comes to physical health, men actually have lower levels of life expectancy, and they're more prone to addictions. Okay, and that is obviously, again, like I said, they're more prone to addiction because when you can't express yourselves, when you can't open up and talk about your feelings, well, then you constantly feel the need to escape, and this is why there is a lot of addiction when it comes to drugs, when it comes to alcohol, simply because of the fact that people or men actually find it really hard to open up. And even when it comes to things like loneliness or even homelessness, and suicide, men actually have high rates of suicide, homelessness, and loneliness. So this is something that we'll be focusing about today. This is something that we need to talk about because there is a lot of stigma when it comes to this. And like I said, we're all in the middle of a pandemic as well, right? Now that is something that we need to talk about as well, because we're all in the middle of a pandemic, and because we're in the middle of a pandemic, everyone is stressed out, right? But at the end of the day, we all hope to come out of this pandemic as better individuals. We all want to, let go of all these problems that we're going through, right? And because of that, obviously, one question that we can ask when it comes to men's health is actually, how do we move forward, right? How do we actually get into, how do we try to address, or how do we try to break these stereotypes that exist? How do we try to make sure that we talk more about men's feelings, we talk more about men's health, and give them some importance of well, right, as well, right? So obviously, because of that, we'll be focusing on men's mental, not only mental but also health as well, because like I said, there's a lot of stigma, and we also need to sort of realize and start having these conversations, because at the end of the day, we need to come to the conclusion, we need to accept the fact that everyone needs to have a safe space to express themselves. Everyone needs to have a safe space to, let go of all the burdens they have, because we're all human. We all want to let go of the problems we have, but we will get back into that soon after this break. So make sure you stay tuned, because this is going to be an interesting conversation, and because we are actually going to talk about a lot of interesting things. So make sure you stay tuned.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, got me thinking. You want to stand out. Why do you want to stand out though so much, especially with these kind of shirts when you're riding? There must be a purpose behind it, right?
Well, when you say a purpose, Nick, what I do, I wear the shirts, mainly one, because they're nice and bright. So they make me visible, especially if I'm riding on the road.
Okay. That's very important, right? Because you want cars, yeah.
Very important. And also, like, people see me in like calves, and perhaps I shouldn't be saying this on air, I suppose, but in the bar afterwards.
All right.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, you look like a guy who would do.
You know me too well. You know me too well, Nick.
The Kaleidoscope.
Hey, it's the girl Sarah right here on the Kaleidoscope. Now, a very good morning if you're just tuning in. We were talking about men's health and why men's health is so important. You're right here on Relax Radio, and I'm super excited to be here because we're discussing something that really needs to be discussed. Okay, and what I mean when I say that is there is a lot of stigma when it comes to when it comes to men's health. There is a lot of stereotypes that need to be broken. There is a lot of traditional narratives that we need to really debate and that we really need to debate and break down because those narratives and those stereotypes are harming to all the men in present society. So that is what we will be talking about, and that's what we were talking about earlier as well. We were talking about stigma and why we need to break the stigma. So I'm super excited to be here and talk to you about those things because I love to raise awareness. I love to educate people. And I love to always make sure that people know about the problems that everyone is facing and that they know about what needs to be done and how we can actually break these stereotypes. So, like I said, I'm super excited to be here. Now, if you have any questions, if you have any messages, any thoughts that you want to share with us, well, make sure you text me on 07852473473 because you can get in touch with me. You can give me your opinion. You can share your thoughts with me. And I would love to share it with everyone who's listening in as well. Now, if you're really interested in the content that we're talking about, if you really like some of the things we say, well, make sure to follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and you will find a lot more fun, amazing content out there. So make sure you tune in for that. But let's get into Men's Health Week and basically why it's important and how this originated, right? So the Men's Health Week was actually it actually originated all the way back in 2002, and how this happened was this was actually led by the Men's Mental Health, or rather the Men's Health Network, right, where representatives from six leading men's health organizations around the world met at the Second World Congress on Men's Health in Vienna, Austria in 2002. And when they met, they realized that obviously that there was a lot of stereotypes, that there was a lot of negative narratives that they needed to debate and that they needed to sort of break to make sure that all the other men out there, all the men who will be born, and also all the men who are presently living won't have to, face huge societal pressures and emotional pressures when it comes to their health. So that is why they actually launched International Men's Health Week. And the goal of this is actually to increase male health issues on a global level and to encourage inter and international institutions to develop health policies and services that meet the needs of men, boys, and their families, right? So when it comes to the history of Men's Health Week, it's actually celebrated. It's an international week that is celebrated in several countries um, from the week that is preceding and includes the and includes Father's Day. Okay, so basically, Father's Day was on the 20th of June, so the week preceding that was obviously the 14th of June, right? So from the 14th of June to the 20th of June is when we celebrated Men's Health Week. And this is actually because they want to focus on men's health, they want to focus on men's issues, and they choose this specific time of the year because of the fact that a lot of attention is paid to men during these times, right? And we're talking about, Father's Day. Obviously, when it comes to Father's Day, you're always thinking of what presents you could give your dad, or, even the people who've been there for you like a dad, especially if you've grown up without a father, or regardless of whether it's your biological father or your stepfather, you don't even have a father. We've all had father figures in our life, right? At some point of time, we've all had father figures, and this day is about appreciating them and encouraging them, and being very grateful for everything that they have done for us, right? So obviously, this is why a lot of attention is paid to men during this week. Okay, so observing Men's Health Week is actually also meant to educate the public about what can be done to improve the state of men's health and to provide free and convenient health services to all the men out there who wouldn't otherwise receive, health care. So another thing that we can see is people who support Men's Week, or people who want to show their support, have this blue ribbon as a symbol of their support for Men's Health Week, and also because it symbolizes the fight against prostate cancer. So let's get into some mental health and health issues that men face, right? So now International Men's Health Week actually happens in June, whereas the Men's mental health month is all the way in November. So in June, you have a week that focuses on everything, physical health, mental health, emotional health, everything. Whereas in November, it specifically focuses on the mental health of men and what we can actually do to break those stigmas, to break the stereotypes that exist, right? So when it comes to some statistics or very common common features when it comes to men's health, apparently the average man actually pays less attention to their health than the average woman. And compared to women, men are more likely to drink alcohol and use tobacco, and they tend to make much more riskier choices, and they don't really see a doctor for regular checkups. And when it comes to diseases, we understand that diseases affect everyone, but because we're focusing on men's health, let's focus on some diseases that are specifically, that specifically happens to men, that men get, or even diseases that have a higher rate of higher risk rate for men than for women. So basically things like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cancer, depression, everyone has that, right? But obviously men have these issues as well. But a unique disease that is obviously only specifically for men or people who identify as male is prostate cancer. So this is why people actually wear that blue ribbon. This is to show their support for all the victims of prostate cancer, or people who are currently going through that, and to educate everyone and to focus more on prostate cancer. So some of the health concerns, or some statistics with all the health concerns when it comes to men is actually suicide happens to be the biggest killer of men under 45, and on an average 12 men take their lives in UK every day. So for all the men who are below the age of 45, suicide is one of the biggest killers. Suicide actually is the reason why most of them die, and that just goes to show that if people, or if men are committing suicide on such a high rate, why isn't it discussed? Why don't we discuss about it? Why don't we talk about it? And why don't we really pay attention to the fact that that this actually happens because of their inability to open up, or even for the fact that sometimes when they do try to open up, that they are stigmatized, right? So and we'll be getting into detail about that in a bit, but let's talk about some other statistics when it comes to health issues that are faced by men, right? So loneliness happens, and when it comes to loneliness, men actually 9 million men actually happen to feel very lonely in their lives. They happen to not be able to express themselves. They mostly keep to themselves, and they feel very, very lonely. And when it comes to diabetes, one in 10 men have diabetes, and obviously again, some of these are just statistics that we really need to talk about and focus on. So like I said, prostate cancer is something that is most commonly seen in men or people who identify as male, and 1 in 8 men develop prostate cancer, whereas heart disease happens to be the leading cause of male deaths. And like I said earlier, men tend to have a higher rate of addiction in comparison to women. So 3 times more men are actually addicted to alcohol than women, and whereas when it comes to homelessness, 86% of rough sleepers are men. So now I've put these statistics out there, and I know these are not just a simple bunch of numbers. If you actually compare them, if you actually look into them, it's very, very, you see how much it affects men out there, but we also then see how we don't really talk about these issues. Now another issue I had was when I was obviously I was reading up articles on men's health, and I was reading up, I was trying to find sources of information about the issues that men face. And I have to say, even though the internet is a big place, there isn't as much information on men's health. There isn't as much information on the diseases and the stigma they face in comparison to all the other health issues and all the other problems that you can find on the internet, right? Which then goes to say that, like I said, we aren't really focusing on men's health. We aren't really doing anything about it. Sure, we just celebrate, we dedicate a certain week of the year to for men, but we don't really move forward. We don't really try to include these when it comes to some of the policies we plan, or even when it comes to our personal lives. Sometimes you can be having male friends who might be going through a multitude of problems, but obviously you aren't going to think about the fact that maybe they also might be going through problems, but maybe you can also text them and check up on them. right? And like I said, this is a lot because of the stigma that we have, or even sometimes even men themselves, try to shame other men when they ask for help, or even when they say they need help. Men and other men, more traditional conservative men would always be like, oh, you're a man, why do you need help? Which is something, like I said again, that is something that we really really need to, this kind of stereotype, this kind of perspective is something that we really need to take down, because it's affecting a lot of people. And this is why there is such a huge rate of suicide. This is why there's such a huge rate of loneliness, because when men do try to talk about their feelings, they tend to get shunned. Okay. Now, right here in England, around 1 in 8 men actually have common mental health problems such as depression, anxiety, panic disorder, or even OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. And but the thing though is, one thing that we really need, that I really need to put out, is the fact that even though there are many mental health statistics out there, we're not really sure if these are the correct numbers. And this is because we can only get statistics from the cases that have been reported, or the times that men have actually come out and asked for help. And chances are, because all the stigma exists, because all of these perspectives exist, there are probably much more men who are suffering. There are probably much more men who are unable to voice their feelings, unable to voice their opinions, because of all the stigma. So like I said, we only know from all the cases that have been reported, we only know from what has been taken down. We don't really know about the other cases, because some of them haven't actually been reported, right? Now let's also talk about why it's so hard for men to get help, or even to consult health services, right? Like I said, we live in, we have, especially when it comes to feminism, we always have this narrative that we live in a patriarchal society. Now this patriarchy actually is, feminists always view this patriarchy as something bad, but and they also view this patriarchy as not only affecting women, but also affecting men as well. Now this is why I said that there is a link between men's health and the feminism movement, because they also acknowledge the fact that the patriarchal system, patriarchal standards, and patriarchal stereotypes can actually have a very negative effect on men as well, because this system is what always forces men, or asks men to be more masculine. This is why men are supposed to be strong, men are supposed to be the breadwinners, men are supposed to be the ones who always earn money. And this is why they actually place more burden on men, to sort of appear strong, to be the to act like you don't have feelings, like you're not vulnerable to anything at all. So like I said, men are often under pressure to actually appear strong and not show signs of weakness, and this means that they're also less likely to talk about any of the issues that they're facing, or that they want to seek help, because they're struggling with their mental health. Okay. And also, like I said, there are a lot of societal expectations. There are traditional gender roles that play a role in why men are less likely to discuss or seek help when it comes to their problems. Now, when it comes to the gender stereotypes about women, we know that there are certain gender stereotypes that are very harming to women, like, oh, women are supposed to be a certain way, they're supposed to dress a certain way, and they're supposed to act a certain way, and we've seen how much it harms women, right? So the same thing actually applies to men as well. These stereotypes that exist, these narratives that exist, can actually be very very harmful to men as well. And it's important that we understand that men can be damaged by these stereotypes, and their expectations can be damaged by them as well, right? And another reason as to, or another say another reason actually as to why they don't get help, it is because men actually have more pride, and when it comes to things like pride and ego, they actually tend to refuse help, and they don't really want to get help, because they tend to think that they can actually handle their emotions, or they can handle their problems better, and they don't want to burden other people with problems, because they feel like other people out there have bigger problems than they do. So that is why men don't actually ask for help. Now, I've also seen that a lot of men don't ask for help because sometimes they're not really aware of the fact that they're going through an issue. They're not aware of the fact that something that they might be experiencing something that is not good. Like for example, sometimes men aren't really aware of the fact that they have depression or that they have anxiety, and that just goes to show how bad it is out there for a lot of men, because they themselves aren't really sure, or they themselves aren't don't know that they are facing these issues. So obviously it's very, very important that we break the stigma. And the more I say it, the more I keep talking about how these stereotypes and how these narratives actually exist, and how, and also how there isn't a lot of awareness when it comes to men's health, especially for some men themselves. It actually just shocks me, because it just goes to show that it doesn't matter how developed the world is, it doesn't matter how we're talking about this issue and that issue, because sometimes we tend to be blind to the fact that men around us might be going through so many things, right? So make sure you stay tuned, because we will get back into this topic. We will be talking about it, but obviously right now it's time to head into a small break. But until then, stay tuned, because I have a lot of fun things coming your way, and I definitely want to, keep talking about this
again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. I mean, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Or you didn't do very well, and they get upset. And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, he might say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it." And that was it. So I dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. I mean, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Hey, it's your girl Sarah right here on the Kaleidoscope. Now you're tuned into Relaks Radio, and right now, we're talking about men's health and why it's so important that we focus on men's health, right? So you're hanging with me, Sarah, and you can, if you have any questions, if you have any opinions, any thoughts that you would like to share with me, well, make sure you text me on 07852473473 and be a part of this conversation, because I would love to hear your opinion. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I would would also love to share them with everyone who's listening in, because that way we can make sure that everyone's voices and thoughts are heard, because that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about why it's important to focus on men's health, and why it's very important that we try to break these stereotypes, try to address these negative narratives, so we can help all these men out there actually come to terms with the fact that it's completely normal to be struggling, it's completely normal to have emotions, and why it's very, very important that you let some of that pain and burden go. Right. So, if you're just tuning in, earlier we were just talking about how sometimes men themselves don't know that they're going through something. They themselves aren't aware of the fact that they are going through a certain disease, or they are going through a certain disorder. And that is why they don't really ask for help, or they don't talk about their emotions. Now, let's look at it in a historic perspective as well, because historically, men did not talk about their emotions, and today that stigma still exists. Now, this is what I kept telling earlier as well. It said that real men don't talk about their feelings, they don't whine about their emotions, that they just put up with their problems and move on, and they figure it out, which is probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I once had a friend who I was talking to my friend, and I was telling her about one of my problems, and she was like, oh, move on. Oh, well, if it was that easy, I wouldn't be telling you about my problems. You know what I mean? So this is the narrative that exists in society as well, and this is the case for a lot of men, because for them, or because for some of these people out there, it doesn't matter if all the men out there are having emotional problems, physical problems, or even financial problems, because they're supposed to put up with their problems and move on, which is really ridiculous. It makes no sense. So this is the kind of stigma that we're talking about, and because this stigma exists, this has actually resulted in men having a lot of difficulty to describe their feelings and to dismiss their emotional problems as nuisances that they can solve without help. And unfortunately, leaving some of these unresolved, leaving some of these issues unresolved can actually lead to much more emotional challenges like depression, anxiety, or even suicidal thoughts, right? Because if you're constantly going to because like I said, a lot of men find it hard to open up, and when you find it hard to open up, when people stigmatize you, when people shame you for opening up and talking about your problems, then you will use other ways to escape your problems, which is things like drugs, which is things like alcohol. And this is why men have three times or rather they're three times more likely than women to be addicted to drugs and alcohol, because they view this as their form of escapism. So when they view drugs and alcohol as their form of escapism, there is something fundamentally wrong in the way we perceive in the way we perceive men's problems, in the way we actually look at men, and see what kind of and actually see what kind of emotions, actually look at the way that some of their problems aren't really spoken about. So we understand that there is something inherently wrong right now in society, because we don't pay attention to problems of problems that are faced by men, and even when we do, we tend to shame them instead of actually making it a safe space for them to talk about their problems. Okay, so and while we're talking about it, it's also important that I tell you about ways in which you can support men, right? Now, if you're concerned about a friend, if you're concerned about you know a friend, if you're concerned about a relative, if you're concerned about someone you care, someone you're close to, even like sometimes it can be your partner as well, if you're concerned about them, one of the best things you can actually do is to make sure that you encourage them to to get help, or you encourage them, or you actually help them see that they're going through something. Now, like I said earlier, a lot of men out there are unaware of the fact that they're going through mental health issues, that they might be, battling some form of mental disorders. So the best way you can actually make sure, or the best way you can show it to them, is by if they open up to you, if they do, which is very, very good, which is something that you can be proud about, because they actually want to talk about their feelings. And especially in a society like this, where people are, or rather men are quite often shamed for it, then that means you're actually helping them open up, right? So if they're opening up to you and you notice, certain things that might be signs of anxiety, might be signs of depression, even OCD, might show any signs of either physical or mental health, symptoms, then the way you can actually address, or the way you can actually talk to them, is by encouraging them to actually get help. So how you can do that is by saying, look, these are the signs of this disease, and I'm not too sure if you have it, but obviously don't say you're sick, or don't say you have anxiety or depression, because more often than not, when you try to tell people they have a problem, they tend to get very defensive about it and tell them, oh no, I don't have that, I'm doing completely fine, I'm just sad for a while. Which is obviously, again, that is a whole different topic altogether. But we're going to focus on men right now. So when it comes to this, it's very, very important that you address them and you tell them in the right way, right? And what I mean when I say that is, make sure you don't use words that might trigger them. Make sure you don't use words that might make it look like they're going mad. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when you try to help people, they think that they're mad, so obviously, when you're trying to address those things, don't make it in a way, or don't say it in a way that makes them feel like that. Try to be very subtle, or if that person doesn't get subtlety, well, then I guess you'll just have to directly tell them. But try to say it in the most understanding and friendly way possible to help them. Okay. And another thing you can do is actually make sure they know that you're always there to listen to them without judgment. Because another reason why men don't open up is because they constantly feel judged, right? And this is what I said earlier as well. Men don't open up because they feel judged. They feel like if they spoke about their problems, they feel like if I opened up about my problems, people would really judge me. So because of that, they don't really open up about their problems. So because that's the case, because men find it so hard to open up, make sure you let them know, or you show them that you won't judge them. Now, something I do when people want to open up to me, or something I do in a lot of the friendships and relationships that I have with my male friends, is that to tell them, hey, it's completely fine to talk about their emotions. I've tried to normalize it as much as possible, and I know it has helped a lot of them, because a lot of them actually open up to me about some of the things they face, and they open up to me about some of the problems they go through, and even sometimes the mental disorders, right? So it's very, very important that you're there for them, that you can always listen to them without judgment, and also try not to do the whole, but don't be sad, don't think your problem is bad, because there are some people out there who have it worse, which is really the worst thing to tell someone when they're talking about their problems. So don't do that. But when they're talking to you, make sure you are willing to listen. Make sure you don't interrupt them as well, and make sure you're willing to listen to them without judgment. And another thing that needs to be kept in mind is, if your friend, your relative, whatever, whoever it is someone who's experiencing mental health problems, then chances are they will be very reluctant to actually reach out. They'll be very reluctant to reach out for mental health help, or they'll be very reluctant to reach out for help. So if they do reach out for help, if they finally come to terms and say, look, this is a huge problem, my problem isn't small, and this isn't something I should be stigmatized for. If they do make the decision, then always make sure you know someone, or you can find someone who will actually help them to talk about their feelings, right? So another thing that you need to keep in mind is also the fact that sometimes sending something small like a text message or even a phone call could actually make a really big difference, especially if the person who is sick, the person who's not okay, is very lonely, is very depressed, feels like they're worthless, and feels like no one actually cares about them. A small text like, hey, how are you doing? Or, hey, I was just thinking of you and this moment we had. Or, hey, remember the time we went on that trip? Or whatever it is, because when you're friends, you do a lot of things. Like, oh my gosh, me and my friends, we do so much of crazy things, right? But obviously, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to do that, and that really sucks. But I always make sure that I reach out to all my friends once in a while, give them a call once in a while, send them a text once in a while, because I understand that a lot of us out there are also busy. So it's not like you have to text them every day, because we all have our jobs, we all have other problems as well. But it's okay to check up on them once in a while. It's completely fine to make sure they're doing okay. And it's completely fine to ensure that you are checking up on them as well. So things like that can actually make a huge difference. And like I was saying earlier, you can also, find out about local services like talking groups, or rather, support groups, or talking therapy, or even just actual, even just like a therapist that can help your friends. And this doesn't actually just have to be just for your male friends. This can also be for your female friends as well, because at the end of the day, we all have problems. Sometimes we all really need, we all need therapy. And that is because a lot of these issues that we're currently talking about, a lot of these issues that are currently, that people talk about more, actually used to be taboo topics back then. Things like mental health, things like depression, loneliness, those things used to be very taboo topics. People didn't want to talk about it. But finally, they do want to talk about it. We're breaking a lot of the stigma that surrounds mental health. We're breaking a lot of that stigma. So it's very important that you know someone, or you have an idea of someone who can help your friends, your family, or sometimes even yourself. Okay. And it's very important that you try to find some male therapists as well, because sometimes some men may find it more comfortable to talk to um they might find it more comfortable to talk to a male therapist than a female therapist. Now those are a few things that you can actually do. And there's also an online directory of peer support groups in England and Wales. So if you're thinking of them, if you are, if you're trying to find ways in which you can help them, you can definitely go on Google, search up, call a bunch of places and ask them how it works, right? And something else we can actually do, in addition to finding help and trying to get them in touch with professional help, is helping them to get help. That is telling them, look, it's completely fine for you to have problems. It's completely fine for you to not be okay. But what's important is, while you accept the fact that things aren't working out, that things aren't going that well for you, you also need to come to terms with the fact that it's very important that you try to get help, right? Because you need to always help people get help. You need to help men themselves sometimes break the stereotypes, break the narratives they have in their head that getting help makes them weak, or getting help makes them not so strong and makes them vulnerable, right? So make sure you do that. And you can also help them contact the general physician, or accompany them to their appointment if they want you to. Now that's something that is very sweet, something that is a very that gesture has a lot of meaning, especially if they ask you to be there for them and they say, hey, I have my appointment, would you come with me and stay out while I'm talking to my therapist? Well, things like that, that is just how you show support. So if you want to show support, if you want to help your friends, if you want to make sure they're okay, make sure you do that, because that's a way you can help them. Now stay tuned, because I'll be talking about a few other ways in which you can support men and their health. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But right now, let's head into a small break.
One of the easiest ways to increase your net worth is to ensure that you have higher cash flows. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to not buy things on hire purchase, not buy things over months and months because you can't afford them now, but you want it. It's kind of that delayed gratification. Rather than buy that couch, that car, that stereo, that computer, whatever item, and pay it off over 12, 24, 36 months at an interest rate, rather invest that money, make do with what you've got, and then after 12, 24, 36 months, take the money that you've now invested and buy that good. An asset could be anything that appreciates or reduces a tax bill. So it could still be a liability, but it reduces their tax bill. And I'm not going to go into the technicalities because that's out of our remit here. However, for our use or our purpose, what we are talking for the listeners here is, I would put this definition of an asset forward. An asset is anything that increases your income. Anything.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out during a day, if you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods. They're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends, and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK.
Hey, it's your girl Sarah right here on the Kaleidoscope. Very good morning to you if you're just tuning in. Super excited to be here. We're talking about men's health and why it's important that we talk about men's health and break all the stigma that surrounds men's health. Okay, that's what we're talking about today, and I'm super excited to be having this conversation because I realize that is a lot of things that are left out for men that are there isn't a lot of information, there isn't a lot of resources when it comes to men's health, and why we really need to break these stigmas, why we need to break these stereotypes that surround men's health, so we can actually evolve as a society, we can progress as a society, and make sure that everyone out there who needs help can actually get it. So that's what we're talking about, and that is what we were talking about earlier as well. Now tune in to Relax Radio, and this is a station where we would love to hear your thoughts, we would love to hear your opinions, your messages, whatever it is, we would love to hear it. So make sure you text me on 07852473473. So I can I can let people know about your questions. I can share them with everyone who's listening in, and that way we can have a fuller conversation as well. Because like I said, this issue is not just specific to men. We need to, or obviously we care about the people, or the men around us, right? We care about their well-being, we care about their health, and we want to make sure that they're happy as well. Okay, because as human beings, the happiness of other people matters to us. And no matter how many times, or no matter how many social media posts that you see, or even on Instagram, you see all these posts that say, oh, you can be alone by yourself. You can be alone, obviously. You can be by yourself. You don't really need anyone. You can be your own happiness. However, everything, after all that's said and done, we are social beings after all. We need to have friends, we need to make sure that the people around us are happy, and we also need to try and help them as well. So that's what we're talking about now. That's what we were talking about earlier as well. Now we were talking about how we can actually support men, how we can show our support to them, and how we can help them get the help they need by making sure they know that they are going through something, and also making ourselves open, making ourselves available for them to talk about their emotions, and also being non-judgmental about the problems that they're going through. Because at the end of the day, everyone experiences things in different levels. No one's problem is bigger than the other one's problems. And I know a lot of us constantly feel like our problems aren't big enough for all the problems other people are facing, but at the end of the day, they're problems. We need to talk about it. We need to sometimes release that burden. We need to stop bottling up our emotions, right? Especially for men. So some other ways where you can actually show support is the Friday of Men's Health Week has officially been named the Blue Day for the week. And this is when a lot of organizations, workplaces, companies can actually help, because they can host a Wear Blue Day to raise awareness and also money for education about men's need to seek regular checkups and health issues that affect men. So when you have a blue day, or when you ask someone to wear something blue and come, or even when you have some sort of merchandise or something that signifies the fact that today is the blue day for men's health, for the men's health week, then that means a lot of people will start asking questions, right? That means people will ask, oh, why are you wearing blue? Why is it called blue day? And when people ask these questions, when you have these sort of practices, you're actually endorsing the fact that men's health is important. You're endorsing the fact that you care about men's health, and obviously that is something that would make your company look good as well, right? Because when you're promoting men's health, and men tend to a lot of workplaces have a lot of men, and it's very very important that we actually talk about these problems. We try to make create a lot of awareness as much as we can to make sure that all the men around us know that it's a safe space for them to talk about their feelings. And obviously, like I said, there is a lot of health issues, there is a lot of health complications when it comes to men. And through this, you can also encourage men to seek regular checkups, and you can talk about health issues that affect men that they themselves sometimes aren't aware about. So obviously, this was created to raise awareness about the importance of male health. Now, another event like this is something called Blue Monday, which is basically an official kickoff for Men's Health Week, where it promotes men's health engagement, education, and advocacy. And obviously, this is a very good thing, because you're trying to make more people aware about the fact that this health week exists. Now, in some countries, this health week or even International Men's Day doesn't really exist, and that is something we need to talk about as well, because I've seen a lot of posts which say, why don't we have International Men's Day? Why is there only a day specifically for women? And another thing we've also seen a lot of people do is they tend to bring up men's issues, especially when women are talking about their issues, right? And what we all need to understand is the fact that either of these issues are not, it's not a competition. It's not about who has it worst, who is probably going through the most amount of trauma. It's not a competition. We're talking about people's health. We're talking about problems. So why do people actually end up making it a competition? It makes absolutely no sense. So it's very very important that when we're discussing men's health, that we don't do it in places where women are talking about their issues, when it's a space for women to talk about the instances they've been traumatized. Because if the only reason you're going to bring up men's health is just to throw shade or make it very hard for women to open up in their safe spaces, then that doesn't mean you're a real health advocate for men's health. You need to be talking about men's health all the time. It doesn't always have to be when women are talking about their issues, right? We understand that everyone has mental health problems, everyone has health problems, and we need to pay attention to all of them. And it's not just specific to one gender, right? So, like I said earlier, we have a lot of people on Instagram or on Facebook have this question of why don't International Men's Day exist? But some countries also don't recognize International Men's Day. Now, obviously, if we're going to talk about mental health, if we're going to talk about Men's Week, we need recognition. We need people to start recognizing the fact that something like this exists and start promoting it as well. So obviously there are some steps that we ourselves need to take. We need to say, even if your country doesn't celebrate International Men's Health Week, well, you yourself, you can make the people around you aware. You can make the people around you know that this is the health week, this is the week you can go and you can talk about. And that's not the only week you can talk about your problems, but this is when there'll be more focus on men's health and the issues that men face, right? So obviously, like I said, it's very very important that we keep these things in mind. It's very important that we support, we encourage, and we help the men out there who are going through problems. And it's very important that all of us play a huge role in trying to deal with all these negative stereotypes that exist. And that is what it is for men's health. But stay tuned, because I'll be talking about other issues as well. But I felt like we really needed to talk about this topic, and I really hoped it helped. I hope it helped a lot of people out there to actually talk about or actually come to terms with the fact that men's health is normal. And also it helped to raise awareness about the fact that men out there have problems as well, and why it's very important that we don't stigmatize them, that we understand and come to terms with the fact that it's very normal for them to open up. And we start breaking that stigma. We start attacking the stereotype that men can't talk about their problems and that men should always be strong. So that is what it is. Now stay tuned, because I'll be back in a few minutes to actually talk about how rest is a recovery to COVID-19, and why we need to rest, and also how our financial privilege, and also the privilege when it comes to resting and when it comes to recovering from COVID. So make sure you stay tuned, because I'll be back in a few more minutes.